Danae Ringelmann left a very lucrative career on Wall Street to pursue her dream, and her dream was to democratize fundraising. So she is helping millions of entrepreneurs, nonprofit leaders, artists all over the world realize their dreams through crowdfunding. And she's going to tell you more about it. Fast Company magazine this year named Danae one of the 50 most influential women in technology. Please join me in welcoming Danae to Social Venture Network. So happy to have you here.
That's awesome. I am super, super, super pumped to be here tonight. It's actually an incredibly full circle moment for me because I can honestly say Indiegogo wouldn't have started without SVN. And I can say that because it actually happened accidentally. I'm about to embarrass somebody, probably someone who doesn't even remember me, a guy by the name of Mal Warwick, who's sitting here in the front row. Yes, you probably don't remember me, but it's because of you that we got off the ground, and let me explain. I quit finance to go back to business school to change finance. We'll get into that in a little bit. And I signed up for a class called Social Entrepreneurship, at Haas School of Business, yeah. And it was one of these classes where they brought in a speaker. Will Rosenzweig was my professor, who many of you might know and remember. And we were allowed to sign up for 2 professors, only 2. And so I saw Mal's name on it, and I was like, I'm going to do whatever it takes to sign up for him, because what we'll do is when we get signed up with him, we get to go to dinner after class. And so I got signed up, and we went to dinner, and he imparted brilliance during the class, principles I still use today. And then we went to dinner, and he continued to impart brilliance. And then totally in the heat of the moment, he turned to me, he's like, so why are you here? What's your story? Something like that. He totally put me on the hot seat. And I was like, well, since you asked, I just verbal vomited everything that I wanted to do. And in the process, you were very encouraging, but sitting across the table from me was a guy by the name of Eric Schell, who was a classmate of mine that I did not know. And he is now my co-founder of Indiegogo. And that night was the night he first heard about the idea and decided, I need to do this with you. So without him and our third co-founder, thank you. It wouldn't have happened because entrepreneurship is hard and it takes a team effort. So thank you, Mal. You don't even know it. So I actually, before I get into the talk, I want to start off with an exercise that Deb asked me to do. And I want everybody to put their thinking caps on, hats on. And if you have a pen and paper, break it out, or break out your mobile phone if you like to take notes. And I have 3 questions to ask you. And I want you all to answer it in your mind or on a piece of paper. And with the knowledge that you're going to be sharing it with the person sitting next to you in a couple minutes. So you ready? All right, I want you to answer this question. Which problem in the world is bothering you most? Why? And what is one idea you can solve it? That will solve it. This might be a problem you're already working on. Maybe it's the next big problem you're about to tackle. Either works. So I'm going to give you like 10, 15 seconds to think about that. Got it? All right, now I want you to answer the question, which other groups of people in the world or organizations or companies want this problem solved too? Write down your answers. Quick brainstorm. Typically, the first ideas that come to your mind are the right ones. Okay? Now, if you had $100,000 right now, what would you do with that money to start fixing this problem? How would you spend the first $10,000, the next 20, and so on? Again, first ideas that come to your mind. Typically, they're the right answer. Got that? All right, now I want you to pick your partner next to you. And for the next 3 minutes, I want the first person to share the answers to these 3 questions. And then at 3 minutes, the bell will ring, and we'll switch. You ready? We're quick problem solvers here. That's why you guys are in this room. Okay. All right, time to switch. All right, time to wrap up, everybody. Your last 2 sentences. Ding, ding, ding. Ding, ding, ding. It's over. Or really, it's just beginning. All right, everyone's waving, hand up. All right. So I hope more brilliance was just born. I think we had, how many people are here attending tonight? 360, so quick math, 720 ideas just got born, for the record. And I wanted to point that out because why I'm up here tonight is that a lot of people think that one of the biggest obstacles to getting ideas off the ground is funding. And what I'm here to prove to you tonight is that the work you just did is all you need to do. And that funding should not be an obstacle. So keep these ideas. Maybe we can even share them with each other after this conference and then help hold ourselves accountable. But hopefully you'll recognize and realize that the work you just did is pretty much all you need to do to really get going and to get on with solving this problem. So I'm here tonight super pumped to talk about a problem near and dear to my heart. And that is how all of us can come together and fund what matters to us, whatever that might be. And in so doing, what we're doing collectively is we're actually changing finance for good. And that means both permanently and for the better. And so to start this off, I actually want to start with a story. I was recently in London, and I was talking to a banker who gives out small business loans. And we were having this fascinating conversation, as most conversations with bankers go. And I was asking him, so do you like your job? And he said, oh, I love my job. I'm like, why is that? He said, oh, because I get to help small businesses get off the ground. I was like, oh, that's awesome, me too. I actually know of this business here in London. It's London's first ever cat cafe. And he's like, say what? I was like, a cat cafe. It's this cafe or coffee shop where you can go and get coffee and treats and everything, and you can hang out with 30 cats. And he's like, huh? I was like, it's actually an incredible business, and it's doing some serious social good. You know, people who can't have cats in their apartments for landlord reasons or too small, but they seriously need that cat relief as like de-stressor. It's like super important. And he's like, okay. I was like, well, it's this awesome business. Do you want me to introduce you? You can give them a small business loan. And he said, no, that's not going to happen. And I was like, well, why not? And he said, I was like, don't you like lending to small businesses and getting them off the ground? Isn't that what you just said? And he's like, well, yes, but not all businesses. I mean, come on. Like, the businesses have to have a market at least. Like, who's going to go to a cat cafe? This is the cat cafe. And I said, well, if I told you that over 1,600 people gave the person starting this cat cafe money before it even existed, and then shared it with over 10,000 people, raising over 100,000 pounds to get this cafe off the ground, would you still say that? And he said, no, clearly I was wrong. And so I share this story not to enlighten you all to this growing trend of cat cafes, which is taking the world by storm, which I know I'm sure you're glad all you knew that now. But really to point out that finance is broken. And in my opinion, what I think finance should do is really unleash the ideas and businesses that the world wants to see. And what I think finance, how it works today, is that it unleashes the businesses and ideas that someone or some third-party person thinks or guesses the world wants to see. And I think that's the fundamental piece that's broken, because as a result, the whole financial ecosystem, the whole system has been based on this centralized decision-making power, where the power to decide what gets funded is centralized with third-party investors, what some people call gatekeepers. It's made finance incredibly risky, and so it's actually made people like that guy, the banker who wants to help businesses get off the ground, it's made him say no more than he'd like to say yes. It's not for anybody's fault except for the system. And so what I see is, you see statistics like this, where only 15% of small businesses, these are US stats, actually can get access to a loan from a major bank. Or worse yet, only 1% of private companies ever get access to venture capital. And when I see these numbers, I don't see the 1% and the 15%. I see the 85% and the 99%. And those are ideas that go unborn every day that we never hear about or know about, simply for inefficient access to capital. And there might be the next cure for cancer. It might be the next mobile app, phone, or banking app in Africa. It might be even the local coffee shop that the community needs to come together in order to weather the economic downturn. And so that's what I see. And worse yet, if you dig into the numbers even further and you look at who's actually getting the traditional financing the way it works, there's certain segments that are even more underrepresented. For example, in venture capital, only 13% of venture-backed businesses have a woman running it. So what I want to talk about tonight is how we can fix this together. And specifically how, I will share with you how Indiegogo is going about it, and how together with open crowdfunding, which is what we're trying to build here, we can come together, fund what matters to us, and actually change finance for good, both permanently and for the better. And to explain where it's coming from, I'm going to start with where Indiegogo came from, which for me started many, many moons ago. When I was a little girl, I was a daughter of two small business owners who ran a brick and mortar business. And I watched them struggle for 30 plus years because not once could they get a loan. They were part of that 85%. Despite hard work, hustle, of a growing business, loyal employees, everything, they just couldn't get access to the right person who would write that check and believe in them. And so when I got out of college, I went into finance to really understand finance. And I got my ass kicked a little bit, or a lot of it. But in that, I actually started to realize how finance was broken, because I actually started to fail for the same reason that they were failing. I went to this event called Where Hollywood Meets Wall Street when I was about 22 or 23. And there I thought it was really just an excuse to get out of the office, and I could use it to justify to my boss because the word Wall Street was in the title. And, but when I got there, what I was hoping to see, which was power brokers in Hollywood, talking to power brokers on Wall Street and see what that whole world was about, it was the exact opposite. And really what it was a room about this size full of emerging artists all hoping to meet their next angel. And because I was one of 5 people from a bank, I clearly was one of the more popular people at the party. I was not the fly in the wall that I was expecting to be. But it wasn't until 2 days later that I actually realized what was going on when an elderly gentleman I had met that night, who was a filmmaker, had literally spent $15 FedExing me his script for his next movie. And on it said, "It was great to meet you, Danae. I look forward to you financing my next film." And I worked in investment banking. I crunched numbers. All I did was spreadsheets. I had no ability to finance his film. But that's when my heart sank, because I realized that here was a man of a lifetime of experience who was begging me with no experience for money simply because I worked at a bank. And so I did what any young girl would do when you're upset, is I called my mom and proceeded to cry for about 20 or 30 minutes, don't remember exactly how long, and ranting about how this is not the land of all opportunity. We sell a fallacy. It's all corrupt. And finally, after 20 minutes, she said, "Well, if you're really that upset about it, go do something about it." And then she hung up on me, which is not surprising when you're a woman who's run a small business for 33 years. You don't have time to beat around the bush. And so I did. I started working with some of those filmmakers and theater producers on the side, and nights and weekends, and I teamed up with a director to produce an Arthur Miller play, which this was right after September 11th, and it was a play called Incident in Vichy, which was about racial profiling. And so the whole goal was to stage a one-night event where we'd pack a house with an audience, we'd get actors to volunteer their time, I'd work my butt off to get investors there so they'd witness the whole night, and at the end they would write that big check and we'd turn it into a full-blown production, and I'd be on to a new career as a New York theater producer. Everything went perfect. I worked my butt off. I almost got in trouble because I think Arthur Miller faxed me something at work, and the compliance officer was like, "What the hell is this?" And I made up some excuse. And we got the play off the ground. Everything went perfect, and the investors said that was amazing. The audience loved it. Everybody loved it, and they said, "That was amazing. We're not investing. Good luck." And it was in that moment that I realized that people that wanted to bring the play to life the most, which were the actors in the audience, didn't actually have the power to make it happen. And I was failing because I just didn't know the right people to bring in that door to write that check. The same reason why my parents suffer or struggle for 30 plus years. So, I decided to fix that. I shortly then left finance and decided to create a company that would democratize financing or fundraising and put the power back into the hands of the people. And so I went back to business school, met Mal, thank you, and started pitching it. And that's where I met my 2 co-founders, Eric and Slava. And they said, if you really want to fix finance today, you have to use the most, if you really want to democratize finance, you have to use the most democratic tool out there. It's called the internet. And I was like, ooh, that's an idea. And actually it made a lot of sense, because what we saw is we looked at what the internet was doing to other industries. We looked and saw that with eBay, it was democratizing commerce. Anybody could sell anything to anybody. With YouTube, that was just getting going. It was democratizing video distribution. Anybody could create a video and become the next Hollywood filmmaker, and anybody could watch whatever they want. So what we asked ourselves is, if you could buy whatever you wanted or watch whatever you wanted, why couldn't you fund what you wanted? And that's what made us pivot into an internet strategy, and that's what became Indiegogo, which is now the world's largest global crowdfunding platform in the world. We're in every country, and we're distributing millions of dollars every single week to entrepreneurs, artists, nonprofits, causes, you name it. We're distributing money to them, and it's pretty damn exciting. Awesome. It's really freaking fun, too. But what's unique about it, and the reason I told that whole long story, is that what makes us unique, and what I think is really one of the driving engines of why we're really changing finance, is that we have a couple attributes, one of which is that we're open. So the last thing we wanted to do was build a financing system full of gatekeepers. again. So that's why we don't have them. That's why it's an open platform where if you have an idea, which you now all have 720, you can click a button called Create and start raising money just as easily as you can click a button on YouTube and start sharing your video with the world. It was very important for us to create that open playing field because the last thing we wanted to do was kill the next cancer treatment dream or the next coffee shop that might actually change its community. The last thing we wanted to do was judge, so that's why we don't. Secondly, we're merit-based in that we've created a whole ecosystem where the ideas that rise to the top are the ones that earn it and deserve it. They deserve it and earn it by working hard and having an audience that cares, having a market that wants their idea to come to life, having a community there. Looking back to the filmmaker and the theater producer I worked with, they had that. They were working their butts off. We had the audience. We wanted it to happen, but we just didn't have the mechanism to make it happen. So we wanted to create a system where the only two factors that matter in success are hard work, hustle, and an audience that cares and wants it to come to life. Also, we've layered in a ton of amplification because the point here is not just to be a quicker or better way to raise money, but really in getting your idea off the ground, there's a lot that goes into it beyond the money. It's finding the people that agree with you and want your idea to come to life too. So that's why embedded in the whole experience is not just the ability to raise money, but the ability for your funders to share and share and share again to find new funders where you actually build a whole community around an idea. This is why a lot of nonprofits, for example, are totally turning to crowdfunding because it's time to start amplifying all their efforts. So clearly, it's working. And what's working about it is that you're seeing businesses get off the ground that traditionally would have never had a chance to because of the traditional system. A great example is Emmy's Organics. This was a young business owner. She had started her own gluten-free macaroon business quite young, and she had taken out a business loan of $10,000, and within 9 months she had the opportunity to distribute her product in a regional grocery store chain. All she needed was $25,000 to redo her packaging, but as a young business, you don't have $25,000 or $15,000 in working capital sitting on the sidelines. So she went back to the bank and said, can you give me a loan again? I have this huge opportunity. And they said, congratulations on the opportunity. We're not giving you another loan. You're too young, too high risk. Sorry, good luck. And so rather than give up her dream, she said, screw that, I'm going to keep going. And she went on the Indiegogo, and she actually raised $15,000. The way she did it is she reached out to her friends and family and current customers, and then they reached out to their friends and family and customers. So she not only raised $15,000 and got her packaging redone and got into grocery stores, but she actually grew her funder base and her customer base at the same time. Full story, within 6 months, she was distributing it across 40 states in America. And within a year, she was up on stage with President Obama when he was signing the Jobs Act, which was legalizing equity crowdfunding. So it was very cool. But what you can see is that this is how open crowdfunding, or crowdfunding with the open approach, is actually leveling the playing field, which is why I say that crowdfunding is changing finance for good, for the better part. We're actually creating more opportunities and digging into the numbers even further and looking at the segments that have been disproportionately left out from traditional finance. We're starting to see really awesome effects as well. For example, the women segment I brought up before, I mentioned only 13% of venture capital backed companies have a woman on their board. Well, over 40% of successful entrepreneurial campaigns on Indiegogo that reach their target are run by women. And those statistics are the same across the artistic industries as well as even the charity industries. I think it's shocking to learn that of the top 400 charities in America, only 18% are run by women. But on Indiegogo, 60% of all the successful cause campaigns are run by women. Talk about when you provide equal access and equal opportunity, everyone just does equally well. And so what I hope you see is that this is how crowdfunding is changing finance for good in terms of for the better, but it's also changing it in a very permanent fashion as well. This is not a fad. This is not going away. And the reason I say this is because it's becoming this permanent piece of the financial ecosystem because it's strengthening the traditional financial ecosystem. And what I mean by that is that in the act of crowdfunding, in the act of reaching out to your community and finding new members and people voting with their dollar, what's happening is people are showing that they want your idea to exist. You know, that's a little bit obvious, but what I like to say is the best indication of market interest is the market itself. And that's what's happening here, is that people are raising money and showing and proving to themselves and to others that they actually have an idea that the world wants. It's not an idea that someone thinks the world wants. They have an idea that the world actually wants. And no traditional financier, whether you're a venture capitalist, an angel, a foundation, or what have you, can give that type of insight and confirmation to anybody. It's just not possible. A great example of this is Gravity Light. This was a young social entrepreneur out of the UK, actually, as well, who had designed this amazing light called the Gravity Light, which is 30 seconds of lifting, would create 30 minutes of energy. He saw this as a great alternative to kerosene in the developing world, which we all know is really expensive and dangerous for young kids. So he came up with this really awesome light, and he then went through the process of trying to get it financed. He called a litany of VCs, and not one of them would call them back. If they did, or they sent an email, it was all with the same line: we have no idea if the world wants this. Like, show me that there's market proof, that you actually have a market for this. So we ended up going on Indiegogo saying, screw this, I'm just going to do this anyway. And he raised $400,000 by pre-offering these lights to people all across the world. I think Bill Gates even tweeted about it. And in the process of doing that, guess who came calling before the campaign was over? All those VCs that were like, I weren't sure there wasn't, they basically said, there's clearly a market for this. So, and it was incredibly empowering, because now this entrepreneur is in the driver's seat to decide what type of financing partner he wants to get in bed with, essentially. So what's happening is that the benefits of market validation, which I just talked about, which is completely different from actually getting the money, which is an incredible benefit when you're locked out of the traditional system, but the actual additional benefits of the market validation and the marketing and the amplification you get out of it is actually creating a way for what's happening is that crowdfunding and this act of people kind of rising to the top in a merit-based way is creating this new incubation platform for traditional financiers to discover the next great idea that aligns with what their interests are and that has a market attached to it. Another kind of side benefit is I was kind of being negative on the gatekeepers as if they're like bad and evil people. Well, they're not. They're the guy who, the Cat Cafe guy who wanted to fund them but couldn't fund them because he didn't think anybody would want to go. He's the guy who, he wakes up every morning because he loves what he does, because he wants to say yes. So what's happening is we're actually changing the role of the gatekeepers from being the people or the purveyors of no to being people who can say yes again. Because what this is happening is we're giving an opportunity for the gravity lights of the world to kind of prove themselves that this is something the world wants. And so then it de-risks that investment for the traditional financier, and they can get involved and actually help with the amplification even further. So hopefully this is making sense. And that this is how crowdfunding, and specifically the open and merit-based approach, is actually changing finance for good. It's both changing it for the better in terms of leveling the playing field and creating this equal opportunity for all ideas to rise to the top, and it's permanently changing finance because it's creating this incredible incubation platform that lets gatekeepers say yes again and stop saying no so much. Well, that's all great. It makes me very happy to say that we can help with this. But what really gets me up in the morning, gets me really excited, is that in the act of making finance more fair, and I consider that a social good for this world, so that more ideas can come to life in a more fair way. We're actually also, there's a huge multiplicative effect to that as well, because in us being able to make finance more fair, people who want to do social good are also getting unleashed. And that's why it's really exciting to be here at a conference, because that's who I'm talking to tonight. Some great examples of people who have really just taken this platform and used it for to achieve their goals is a lot of social entrepreneurs. One team is a young female entrepreneur team out of Seattle who saw that in Latin America, I forget the specific country, a lot of women were, they found that girls who get exposed to sports have greater opportunities, or typically create more opportunities in their life. So they created, and they also saw that there was a lot of waste happening in this one community. So they created a whole system where they put a bunch of women to work using recycled materials to make bags, and a percentage of the profits that come from these bags are going to go to paying for soccer fields for the young girls in those same communities. And so they launched their business, high-risk business for sure, but they launched it by raising, they only needed $25,000 to really get the first run of production up, but they ended up raising over $67,000, all before the thing even existed, from people all across the world. Then you have people like Black Girls Code, which is an organization to empower more young girls to learn how to code. And I don't need to convince this audience of the kind of multiplicative and amplification benefits of giving girls an education. And so they set out to expand their program to teach more girls and raise $100,000, and they raised over $120,000. This is another amazing social entrepreneur. This guy actually had all his funding. This is a patch. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's a patch that puts off this, I don't know if it's an aroma of some sort, but it basically makes mosquitoes blind to you. So it's a new solution to protecting you against mosquito bites and therefore mosquito-borne diseases, especially malaria. And the people behind this, they actually had the financing. Gates Foundation had stepped in to invest in the early days. But they still turned to Indiegogo to raise what they were hoping for was $75,000, purely with the goal of getting the word out. They wanted people to be emotionally invested in this solution so that they could actually build a marketing army. So then when they really released the product, it would go really big. And they ended up raising over $500,000, which is wildly successful. And now they're in the process of bringing this kite patch to market. And they used a really cool model where when you funded the campaign, you got a perk. And in the perk, you got the kite patch, and then you also gave one away to someone in the developing world. And then you have social entrepreneurs trying to solve the big health problems. There was this one campaign that was from scientists for eye cancer. They raised $100,000. It was a cancer treatment that a lot of the traditional scientific organizations just weren't buying. They didn't want to put money behind it. So they went on Indiegogo. They raised $100,000 from the people. And in the process of doing it, a high net worth guy found out about them because of their campaign going viral, and he came in and put another $1 million in. So that speaks to the incubation platform idea once again. And it's not just social entrepreneurs, it's organizations, large and small, corporations, brands, everybody getting involved. We had an amazing campaign, and they're doing it to really amplify the social impact of their efforts. We had a campaign called Urban Gardens, where Whole Foods came together with PACT, which is a sustainable, eco-friendly underwear company, underwear and socks. And they really wanted to support urban gardens, food education, food growth education, all that. And instead of them just writing a big fat check to planting urban gardens all across the country, instead they really took the approach of really engaging their communities. And so what they did is they ran 70 campaigns all across the country. They but they unleashed local environmental activists to each run their own campaign, each raising around $1,000 or $2,000, which is enough to actually fund an urban garden. They provided a lot of the marketing support to get the word out, and PACT provided all of the underwear and socks as perks. So what happened is they really unleashed their communities to unleash their communities, if that makes sense. So rather than just give a man a fish, where he'll only eat for a day, they're actually teaching their communities how to fish, which is teaching them how to engage their community around an urban garden and really increase community engagement. And they raised over $100,000 for 70 urban gardens across the country. And as a result, now all these gardens are being built and communities are engaged and involved. And then one of my favorite examples is SVN. This is a really exciting development. Deb and I and our teams have just come together to actually unleash social good even further. What's beautiful about SVN is that it is bringing all of us together where we're advisors, we have experience, we have all of this intelligence that we can impart and share with one another to bring more ideas to life. I was a beneficiary, which is why Indiegogo was able to get started. And what we've done is now we've come together to amplify that impact. And so while we can help bring a lot of the funding infrastructure, SVN can bring all of the ecosystem around advice and relationship building and all that stuff. And together we can get even more social entrepreneurs unleashed. And there's a couple here tonight, which we're going to have a preview fund, which I'm really excited about. And also, SVN went another layer deep and launched its own campaign. So it's totally walking the walk. So triple the bottom line campaign. So that's all I have for you tonight. I hope you realized a couple things tonight. Specifically, I hope that you realize that funding is not an obstacle anymore. It's not an excuse to not move forward. All that really lies between you and your idea coming to life is yourself and your ability to connect with your community. And so I leave you with what the question is, so what's stopping you? We have 720 ideas to go birth. Let's go do it. Thanks.